1 year after toppling Sheikh Hasina, is Bangladesh on a path to prosperity or despair? A caretaker government remains in power under Nobel Prize winning economist Muhammad Yunus, with national elections slated for next year. But after hundreds of lives were lost fighting for democracy, can new leadership meet expectations for freedom and development? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Bangladesh. It was a revolution in Bangladesh whereby years of what many described as one-woman rule was brought down by a movement of the people. But 1 year on, how much has changed? For many Bangladeshis, justice has yet to be delivered for the 1,400 protesters killed and thousands more wounded during a government crackdown last year. And now a national political battle has many questioning whether a fair election can ever be held. Still, interim leader Muhammad Yunus stressed this anniversary marks an unforgettable chapter in Bangladeshi history that has liberated the country from long-standing fascist rule. Here's a look.
Exactly 1 year after the fall of Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh is still grappling with chaos. What began as protests against the government's job quota reforms quickly escalated into a wider uprising against her authoritarian rule. The brutal crackdown on demonstrations left over 1,400 people dead. During the Awami League's 15-year rule, Hasina put the country's democracy in peril by suppressing dissent, restricting the media, and allegedly manipulating elections. When she fled the country to India, there was widespread jubilation in the streets. The moment was hailed as a second revolution, raising hopes for a new Bangladesh. The Nobel Peace Laureate and renowned economist Muhammad Yunus stepped in as interim leader, tasked with rebuilding trust and overseeing democratic elections.
Today, we have not come merely to remember the past. We have come to take a pledge that we will never bow down to any form of oppression, and that we will establish an accountable, humane, democratic, and egalitarian state, a state that will always work for the welfare of its people.
Yet many say progress has been too slow. Hasina is currently facing trial in absentia for crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, the interim government has suspended all activities of her Awami League, pending investigation. But Human Rights Watch says Yunus is falling short in delivering systemic reforms to protect human rights. Families of victims and activists warn that delayed justice risks eroding public trust.
These children gave their lives for a better country, one free from autocracy and corruption, where killings and enforced disappearances would no longer happen. They dreamed of a beautiful Bangladesh, but perhaps we are beginning to lose that hope.
Political divisions are also deepening. The frontrunner for the next elections, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, demands voting by February next year at the latest, but Yunus has set the date for April. The interim government has also lifted the ban on the country's largest Muslim party, Jamaat-e-Islami. The students who led the movement that ousted Hasina have formed the National Citizens Party, pledging to fulfill the revolution's dreams. Last month, pro-Hasina activists attacked one of the party's rallies, clashing with police and killing 4 people. A recent report shows political violence has claimed at least 72 lives between April and June. So the fragile security situation and lack of concrete reforms have led some to question whether holding elections alone can resolve the political turmoil.
It will get us back to 1991, when we had election in every 5 years, but within those 5 years, the governing party took absolute control of the state machinery to collect rent, to offer rent to its loyalists, and create all the problems. So is that really the future that we want? For that to prevent, we need some structural reform. We need a check and balance. We need a power share.
On the economic front, Bangladesh continues to struggle with high unemployment, and a 20% tariff imposed by the US, the country's largest buyer of garments, threatens 4 million jobs. Still, people have taken to the streets to mark the anniversary. Yunus called this an era of opportunity for reform and unity. But the question remains, will that opportunity be seized, or will Bangladesh spiral into further unrest?
Well, joining me now to discuss where Bangladesh is going 1 year after the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina are from Dhaka, founder of the Dhaka Forum, Afshak Zaman; from Uppsala, Bengali-Swedish poet and playwright Anisur Rahman; and from Washington, director of the South Asia Institute at the Wilson Center, Michael Kugelman. Thanks all so much for being with me. Ashfaq, I'll start with you. Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus, he addressed the nation today, as you're aware, to mark this anniversary. He spoke of the heroes and the martyrs of the July uprising. He was accompanied as well by a mix of political figures, excluding, of course, anyone from Awami League, but the leader of the previously banned Jamaat-e-Islami was there. So how is this all being viewed by Bangladeshis today? Is he seen as a unifier, or do political divisions still run too deep?
No doubt today was a historic moment for all of us. It was celebration, of course. But I think post Hasina, we actually got a very rare opportunity, a clean slate, and with it came soaring expectation. We had, I would probably say that the burden of expectation is heavier than the delivery. I think that is probably the general mode. In my opinion, it's probably not failure, but it's not fulfillment either. And that's the sentiment that I get across when I walk in the streets and meet and greet with other people. But having said that, it is true that Yunus was the face at that moment, the unifying face at the very fragile moment. But since then, it has been a mixed journey. Just 2 days back, the very party which actually, was the main youth who were involved in the in this uprising, they actually also stated few things which goes against the interim government. From time again, different political parties with BNP as well have expressed their dissatisfaction, particularly in terms of clarifying the date of the election or regarding the pace of the election, so the reforms as well. There has been some concern. But overall, we are happy that it's in a stable condition. We have more or less people are happy about the banking sector and the institutions. But again, as I mentioned, that maybe it's not failure, but it's not fulfillment either for most of the people.
Okay, let me ask Anisur if you agree that Bangladesh was given a clean slate, as Ashfaq was describing, and if so, how clean is that slate today? Is there still hope going forward, or do you think the people of Bangladesh at this point are too frustrated with perhaps a lack of progress given their expectations were so high?
Partially, there is reason to agree on what Ashraf made in his observation. If we go back to the foundation of our history in 1971, there was a two polarization, pro-1971 and anti-1971. Yes, there are a part of population might have had reasons to be satisfied, as Ashraf did, because 1971, majority people in favor of the independence of Bangladesh. What happened in July, August 2024, it was an anti-1971 spirit implemented in a project against Bangladesh's independence. It was not only was Sheikh Hasina's government, and it was sponsored by United States, and it was confessed by US President Donald Trump, and also it was major part was contributed by the banned Jamaat-e-Islami, who had a controversial and anti-humanity, anti-Bangladesh rule in 1971 through their raping hundreds and thousands of women, killing millions of people of our country. And collaborated with the occupying Pakistani forces in 1971. That people with in
Okay.
line with that spirit might have had satisfaction or might have reason to celebrate, but the oppressed majority people of our country, they don't have that reason. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me ask Michael then, as a very informed outside observer, where you see Bangladeshi unity today, especially when you think back to 1971. Does this compare in any way? And I mean, of course, it won't be easy. That goes without saying. But is this at least on a decent track?
Well, it looked that way at the start. I mean, I think this noted before that once Hasina was ousted and she left the country, the nation really united around the new interim government and Dr. Yunus, who is viewed as a hero by many in Bangladesh, particularly by young people, and young people dominate the country demographically and have for a while. But indeed, I do think that things have gone a bit sideways over the last few months. We've seen the retributive politics that have so defined Bangladesh's history for such a long time return with a vengeance. The interim government, including Dr. Yunus, have indeed sought to ban the Awami League, and one can understand why. The view of the government is that the Awami League, including Sheikh Hasina, have refused to acknowledge, much less apologize for their excesses and brutalities of the last 15 years, including those terrible few weeks leading to her ouster when you had all these deaths of peaceful protesters. But the fact that the Awami League has been banned, I think, makes it difficult to say that the country has been united. And yes, I mean, you did have a show of force in terms of many different political parties being at the ceremony today to mark this July declaration. That's terrific. But I think that with the Awami League sideline, that makes it hard to say that there's complete unity. And also, as the economy has continued to struggle, as the law and order situation has been rough, that's brought more criticism directed at the interim government, which I think has undercut that ability for this government to unite the country. And now many in Bangladesh are really pushing for elections sooner rather than later.
Right. Very quickly, Michael, Sheikh Hasina also seized the day to denounce Chief Advisor Yunus, and she called it an unelected regime. So what kind of impact do you think that might have in Bangladesh, if any? Would it rally any kind of support, or is she far enough marginalized that whatever she says on a day like today doesn't matter?
Well, it certainly will not help her cause in Bangladesh, which I would argue is already very bad in the sense that she's reviled by many in Bangladesh, including by I think that many that might have previously supported her, given what her government security forces did over those last few weeks before her ouster, and from her new home in India over the last year, she has often railed against the interim government and refused to apologize for what happened over those terrible violent days before her ouster, and this has gotten people even angrier. So for her now to come out and deliver this one more point of criticism certainly is not going to help her cause. I mean, it's true that the interim government is not elected, but I think for her to make a comment like that on a day like this, when the focus is on what's happened over the last year and the solemnity of what happened in those moments in July leading up to August 5th of last year, to say the least, is tone deaf. But of course, she doesn't seem to care about such things. It's not going to help her cause.
Ashfaq, would you agree there? And also on the flip side of that, could you address what Anisur was saying about feeling a bit disturbed by the Jamaat-e-Islami appearance now firmly on the political stage, a party that had been banned for so long, that makes certain people in the country nervous?
I think when it comes to Hasina, I think for me personally, I think it's game over for her. I mean, from being the prime minister of a nation, she became the prime monster of the nation. Hasina didn't just only lose office, actually, she lost the moral ground. And it was probably the first time in the history of Bangladesh that a sitting prime minister fled the way she did. And all the trail of blood that she left behind cannot be whitewashed by some mere political statements or political propaganda based internally or even externally. I think if not for Awami League, it's probably a bit over for her. And if I'm talking about Awami League, they are not dead, but I would probably say they're deeply disoriented. I mean, post 5th August, their total support base fractured. Others have migrated ideologically, joining new platforms or coalitions, let it be BNP, NCP, or they just became, dormant in politics whatsoever. Perhaps a very small radical core is still trying to stay relevant by spreading these false propagations through noise, disruption, and maybe a bit of nostalgia. But right now, to be honest, both Sheikh Hasina and Awami League is not a decisive force. But however, it still remains a dangerous variable. Because if our current political actors, if they fail to build unity and they succumb to their ego and infighting and the polarization, we have to remember that Awami League thrived and survived on polarization. So I believe the choice is actually ours. Either we build unity or we prepare for the ghost of the past to rise again. Regarding Jamaat-e-Islam, I think people over here, they have, as I can see, that they're quite well integrated to the society now. They're holding large rallies. There has been also mixed opinion about them. But at the same time, as they were part of the force in rallying against the past regime, and they played a significant role as well, I think people have also incorporated them in their minds as a force for the new Bangladesh 2.0. Where they stand politically, that of course time will tell, and particularly we'll find it out during the election time.
Right. So, Anisur, you have an idea there of obviously who will be participating in the elections. You may not agree with some of the parties, including particularly Jamaat-e-Islam, in the mix, but do you at least believe these elections will go forward fairly if held as planned in April? Will they be a reflection of the will of the people?
I think the statement and words we got from Yunus and his colleagues is a bog words, and there is no signal to have an election or it is possible to have an election. Let me give an example. Lastly, one judge in Dhaka said the country is on life support, and one lawyer today said the lawyers are not no lawyers do not have courage to go to the court, and the poor foundation of a state, judiciary, executive, and parliament, and the fourth state is pillar is the media. All the four pillars are dysfunctional. It's a kind of catastrophe, and economy is not functioning. Everything is out of order. On the other hand, they have a strategy to nurse mob crimes and also to exclude the majority political party, including the Awami League and the 14 party coalition and the Jatiya Party. And if we mention two last survey, one was made by Voice of America and the other one is the KNR Bulletin. According to the Voice of America survey, 57% people want Awami League should get the right to take part in election and political practice. And 52% people supported Awami League. If there is election today, they will support Awami League. But how they do it? All these are propaganda. All these are undermine the spirit of 1971, secular progressive culture and existence of Bangladesh. And the country is now divided in two parts, the oppressed and the oppressor. And the opposition, including the 14 party, the Jatiya Party, the majority people inside the oppressed, and the Yunus is a kind of ultra-fascist, is leading the oppressed, the oppressor.
Okay.
So in the long run, the oppressed will win, not the oppressor.
Okay. Well, I mean, Michael, it was an optimistic end to his analysis there, but Anisur doesn't seem to have much confidence in an election being seen as fair, being representative of a true democracy. What do you make? And especially given the fact that, Human Rights Watch has also said that this interim government and what Bangladesh has seen over the last year is failing on a basic level of human rights and to enforce basic human rights law. But still, do you see that as just the hypercritical edge of analysis, and in the main, things are as well as they could be expected to be?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say. I mean, Bangladesh deserves a free and fair election. The last few elections in Bangladesh have not been free and fair, but those elections were overseen by the party and leader that are no longer in the picture. So if one wants to be optimistic, one can say that, things will be different this time. But, coming back to the Awami League issue, I mean, the Awami League has been banned from the election. And it's true, as was noted before, that this party is not what it used to be. It's a shadow of its former self. It lost tremendous levels of support, but still it remains one of the largest and influential parties in Bangladesh. And for it to be sidelined from the election, that in of itself will raise questions about the free, how free and fair this election is. One thing I worry about as well, once the election campaign starts, will you have backers or sympathizers of the Awami League that try to cause trouble, that try to provoke violence during the election campaign? That certainly is something to worry about. Hopefully it won't come to that, but that would certainly raise a lot of concerns as well. But I'd like to be optimistic and think that yes, I mean we have new people at the helm. You're not going to have Sheikh Hasina and her party leading these efforts to have an election, because the elections that she oversaw during the last 15 years, clearly they were not free and fair. So let's hope that things are better this time. And I know that for the people in Bangladesh, ultimately I would defer to my co-panelists, but I'm sure we can all agree that one thing that this country really wants and deserves is a free and fair election, to deliver a new government with a strong public mandate, ready to continue with this reforms process that was begun by the interim government, but there's still a lot of work that will be left to be done.
So, Ashfaq, what do you fear most? What could stop any upcoming election from being free and fair? What are the elements on the ground in Bangladesh that make you worry that democracy could be derailed?
I think because there is a notion, there's a sentiment that a large portion of the citizens, they are actually very disappointed on the whole political culture. So although it's probably not the right feeling, but many people are actually thinking about not about democracy any longer. They're trying to find their solace in trying to find other alternatives, and that is a risky, because as Amartya mentions that it is not a question of whether a country becomes fit by democracy. I mean, whether they're fit for democracy, they become fit through democracy, right? So I think on that particular note, we have to be all aligned that democracy is actually the solution. As my co-panelist was also mentioning, that there is a growing anticipation of the election. But at the same time, there are some worrying equation. If I'm being very specific and frank, is the fact that there is a lack of clarity regarding when the election can actually take place. So there is a question and intent from some quarters about whether this government is trying to delay the election, because the more you delay, the other probabilities, other disruption probabilities actually increases, But if you have a solid clarity that, okay, this is the date of the election, this is the preparation time, we have done, and this is the reform threshold, we will be cut, there's a cutoff line on how much we can drag this discussion. I think that will give a lot of clarity. In general, including people like me and including many others, they've been waiting for the election because, as my co-panelist was saying, that for the last 3 terms, the election was not actually well participated. It was quite meaningless to be frank. So there is an anticipation, but there's also speculation.
Okay.
The more we can get rid of the speculation, the better we can focus on the election itself.
But just quickly, I mean, delay the election to what end? Would it be seen, as an attempt at a power grab? And then also, would an underperforming economy in the run-up to any election complicate things even further?
Well, we can see the essence of that already, like economy, the FDIs are not really coming as much as we expected. There is although the data is probably both in the favorable side as well as the unfavorable side, but there's a feeling between the people, and that's actually what matters. The perception prevails that business has been difficult. People have been making losses financially, economically. People feel that they're not in the greatest of the position. So this will all add on to the days that the election is stretched. So I feel, that is also an important aspect.
Anisur, your final thoughts?
Yeah. What do you mean by democracy? Democracy is the democracy Government by the people, government of the people, government for the people. But this regime is running by their thought process of mobocracy, and they are excluding more than 50% people in normal life and economy. They are not allowed to participate in the normal life. They cannot go to the schools. They are not allowed to take part in their exams, and people are on flee and run and hide. How and last week, one of the cabinet members, Brigadier Sheikh Hasina, he told nothing is functioning, neither the administration nor the police. So it's impossible to run a normal routine work. Then how they can dream to hold an election? It's a big issue. At the same time, the army is blamed for mass killing in the Gopalganj district. So it is not so easy. And I think to have a fair and accepted elections, an inclusive election, there is a ground to have a new interim government without Yunus's cabinet, or any caretaker government maximum 3 months or 4 months. We have a long records of interim government who could hold elections in 90 days. So there is a possibility.
Okay.
There is a ground for a new interim government. They are failure.
Okay, Anisur, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank sincerely all three of my panelists so much for being with us, our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media. And do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.